Hey guys, tonight we slip back through the veil of time, not into a bloody battlefield or some grand throne room, but into the hushed stone corridors of a medieval monastery, where shadows stretch long, and the only sound is the faint creak of ancient wood and the occasional sigh of wind through arrow-slit windows. You're not a lord, not a knight, not even a plague doctor. You're just a tired visitor, maybe a novice, maybe just a wayward traveler. You've been invited, or more likely, quietly instructed to stay the night at the abbey, and as you step through the cloister gate, a sleepy bell tolls overhead, marking the end of Compline, the final prayer before lights out. It smells faintly of old incense, worn parchment, and damp wool. Your feet make barely a whisper on the flagstone floor, but even that draws glances. The monks here, robed and bowed by habit as much as humility, nod at you without speaking. Their heads are shaved, tonsured into shining half-moons that catch the flicker of beeswax candles lining the wall. Nobody speaks. Nobody dares. Silence isn't just golden, it's mandatory, especially after sundown. You're ushered past a thick wooden door into the cloister walk, where vines snake across pale stone arches and the chill of night air seeps through your layers. The stars above blink with indifference. Inside, in the warming room, rare luxury, you pause before a meek fire. An old monk, gray of beard and twitchy of eye, leans toward you and mutters just loud enough to be scandalous. "Don T, eat the cheese." You blink. He nods solemnly, like this is a real warning, because to these men, it is. Cheese after dark, especially aged, soft-trended, strong-smelling cheese isn't just an indulgence. It's a doorway, a risk, potential invitation to sin, sleep paralysis or worse, vivid dreams that wake you sweaty and panicked and singing psalms backward. You probably won't survive this monastery's night shift without feeling a little odd. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time you're watching. I love seeing where these stories drift to. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You follow Brother Petros, whose robes swish gently across the floor? You think about asking questions, but even your whisper feels like shouting. Instead, you glance up at a fresco showing St. Jerome, sleep-starved and hunched, translating the Bible while a lion naps behind him. Monks never did like too much sleep. In fact, they split their nights in half two chunks, separated by midnight prayer. First sleep and second sleep. Time to wake in the dark and pray, because that's when temptation prowls. Petros points to a bench outside the refectory, where others gather, eyes drooping, but hands folded. You sit. A carved stone gargoyle above you dribbles water from its mouth. This is the night's rhythm, silence, stillness, and the distant scent of beeswax and boiled turnips. And yet, something's off. A low stink creeps into the corridor, faint but present, salty, sour, unmistakable. You wrinkle your nose. That's cheese. A creak to your left. The door to the refectory is ajar, and just inside by dim candlelight sits a small wheel of cheese, lonely on a wooden board, crusted and cracked with age. A monk stares at it like it might move. You whisper, daring, "What's the issue with cheese?" Another monk beside you doesn't turn his head. It just whispers, "Nightmares. Lust. Waking visions. It's not sinful, exactly, but it's close." You consider this as your stomach rumbles. You haven't eaten since noon. Then a younger monk with suspiciously full cheeks walks by, lips tight, as if hiding a guilty secret. You swear you smell Gouda on his breath. Mainstream historical records confirm that dairy specially aged cheese was widely consumed in monasteries, forming a staple of their surprisingly varied diets. But at night, that was controversial. Not forbidden by canon law, but frowned upon by more conservative orders, especially those swayed by Galenic medicine. According to the old humoral system, foods weren't just tasty, they were powerful. Cheese, rich and dense, was thought to thicken the bodily humors, especially phlegm. That might not sound dramatic to modern ears, but to medieval monks, too much phlegm meant bad dreams, melancholy, spiritual confusion, even possession. The kind of sleep where your soul wanders off and might not come back in one piece. You're shown to your cell in narrow, windowless closet of timber and stone. There's a bed, technically. Really, it's a board with straw and a single blanket. You lie down, trying not to think about cheese or phlegm, the ghostly tale you half heard earlier, about the monk who mistook a ball of mozzarella for the moon and preached to it for an hour. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were widespread or specific to certain cloisters. A voice in your memory says probably from that time you read a monastery scroll in the daylight, which now feels like a lifetime ago. Outside, the wind groans through the courtyard. Somewhere, a bell rope sways. You close your eyes, wondering if dreams will come. And if they do, they smell like Roquefort. The candle guttering in your cell goes out with a soft hiss, and darkness folds in like velvet. You pull the scratchy wool blanket up to your chin. It smells faintly of tallow and that's something else. Cheese, maybe? You try not to think about it. You're not supposed to be thinking about cheese, but it's hard not to, when it feels like the whole monastery is holding its breath about a wedge of dairy. You hear slow footsteps in the hallway. Not marching, not sneaking, just the resigned rhythm of someone with bad sandals and worse knees. The monk pauses outside your door, sniffs, moves on. Apparently they do rounds at night. Not to check for intruders, but for snackers. The monastery has rules. So many rules. A literal book of them tucked into the abbotess' study, and copied again and again by scribes whose hands cramped just from writing no. And one of those rules in written whispered and enforced with a grim frown is about cheese. In the daylight, cheese is acceptable, encouraged even. You watched earlier as the monks made their daily offerings, bowls of barley, hard bread, dried fish, and yes, carefully aged wheels of cheese, wrapped in linen, tucked beside apples in a basket. It's practical. Dairy keeps well, especially when salted or aged. In some regions, monasteries made so much cheese they practically functioned as dairies with a chapel attached. But after sunset, cheese was troublesome. You remember the way Brother Ulrich said it? It awakens the belly when the soul seeks silence. The rule wasn't about cheese per se, was about what cheese might do to a body about to enter rest. Medieval monks were obsessed with moderation, fasting, abstaining, suppressing every indulgent urge. Cheese, they said, could spark dreams, and not the saintly kind. You shuffle through a memory from earlier that day Brother Ambrose and his glistening eyes as he whispered that Saint Benedict himself once warned novices to avoid dairy at bedtime if they valued their chastity. That part wasn't in the rule of Saint Benedict, you read. But then again, monks did love a good embellishment. Cheese was heavy, thick, not just in texture, but in metaphysical residue. It weighed down the spirit, curdled the mind, interfered with divine sleep, which some monastics viewed as a gentle rehearsal for death clean. Dreamless and free of distractions, yet cravings didn't go away just because the sun did. In the refectory, long after the meal, a novice stood awkwardly in the corner, staring at a lone wedge left behind. His fingers twitched, his mouth opened, and just when you thought he'd go for it, he crossed himself and walked away. But he looked back. Twice. One of the most infamous cases you read about in the monastery. E.S. Illuminated Records was from the Abbey of St. Ulrich in the 13th century, where a monk reportedly broke the evening fast with a full wheel of goat cheese and later burst into the chapel raving about angels teaching him a secret gospel written in birdsong. The monk was transferred. The cheese was buried. Of course, not all orders agreed. Some Cistercian communities in Burgundy held that as long as the cheese was cold and chaste, whatever that means, it posed no risk. Other, more austere Benedictines labeled it a tongue's temptation. And here's the strangest part. It wasn't just about dreams, it was about sleepwalking. Wouldn't he believe how many handwritten scrolls contained stories of monks rising from bed after a dairy-heavy supper and wandering the halls reciting psalms in Greek backwards. In fact, you overheard two monks earlier whispering about a notorious cheese fugue incident at a rival abbey where 4 friars all woke up stacked like firewood in the scriptorium. The cause, a spiced sheep cheese smuggled in from Aragon. Still, historians argue whether these incidents were rooted in actual sleep disorders, food-borne illness, or simply communal hysteria around indulgence. No hard proof, no clinical tests. It's just yellowed pages, half-remembered chants, and warnings muttered in candlelight. You shift under the blanket, the straw poking through like guilty needles. You don't feel hungry exactly, but you do feel ... tempted. Maybe it's the talk of it. The taboo, the forbidden wedge. The idea that a soft rind could provoke visions. That cheese might unlock hidden corridors in the brain where the saints and demons whisper equally. Besides, monks have cravings too. Always have. Their diets were strict, mostly pulses, grains, some vegetables, and modest fish. Cheese. That was the comfort food of the cloister. The guilty pleasure that didn't require a sin, just a bit of mild disobedience and a lot of candlelit guilt. You remember reading one monastery-esque chronicle where a particularly zealous abbot actually tried replacing cheese with dried peas at supper. Monks rioted, quietly of course. It just started putting peas in the cheese press and calling it repentance curd. Even now, under layers of asceticism, you feel it, the suppressed joy of a good, salty bite of something rich. And yet, no one talks about it openly. They just shuffle around it, like monks do with everything slightly human. They pray it away. Or failing that, hide it in their sleeves. You sit up, glancing toward the door. In the hallway, there's a flicker of movement, soft clink. Someone's doing rounds again, making sure no one's hoarding snacks under their cowl. And you lie back down, trying to will yourself into the safe kind of sleep, the kind without flying curd wheels or Greek psalms echoing in your head. Outside, the night deepens. A bell waits, silent for now. And in the corner of your cell, you swear. You can smell brie. Sleep doesn't come easily. Maybe it's the lump in the straw mattress. Maybe it's the faint creak of timbers shifting above you. But mostly, it's that you can't stop thinking about cheese. Specifically, the warning about cheese dreams. You heard it again at dusk, from a monk polishing a candlestick in the chapel, his voice low. Tone matter-of-fact. Eat cheese after Compline, and you'll wake up chasing shadows that don't belong to you. Then he smiled like it was a joke, but his eyes didn't smile.
Oh.
The notion sounds absurd, modern brain as you are. But here, inside stone walls built before your great-grandmother's time, absurd starts to feel oddly reasonable. You lie there, blanketed by centuries of superstition. Then a whisper reaches you through the corridor. He saw the Virgin, riding a cow. The voice is hushed, like it's retelling a ghost story. You shift silently, inching closer to your cell door. It's cracked slightly. The monks aren't in bed yet. Some of them sit on benches down the hallway, murmuring in Latin and half-suppressing yawns. And the cow had wings. Huge wings. Another monk grunts. I told him not to eat that rind. You stifle a chuckle. Cheese-induced visions were such a known phenomenon that some abbeys developed informal lists of permitted versus volatile cheeses. Hard cheese. Fine. A nibble of mild sheep's milk. Borderline. Anything soft, warm, or, God forbid, blue-veined, was treated like spiritual kindling. Fuel for vivid, often indecorous dreams. And not all those dreams were quiet. You hear about it in hushed tones. Monks leaping from bed, babbling riddles in languages they didn't study, or worse, sleepwalking to the altar, trying to marry the crucifix. Apparently this happened at least twice in the 14th century. Different abbeys. Same cheese. Brie. You might laugh, but it's hard to smirk when you lying in a pitch-black stone. Box built before plumbing with only the company of wheezing nocturnal friars, and the ambient drip of water from a ceiling crack. Still, mainstream accounts confirm monks often reported intense dreams, not always of a spiritual nature. There's a preserved entry in the Journal of Prior Gervas of Kent, dated 1284, detailing fleshly longings and thoughts of capering women with wheels for heads following a late-night snack of smoked cheddar. He blamed the devil. Novice blamed the cheddar. Even back then, monks knew dreams were tied to the belly. Digestive unrest, Galen had said, disturbed the balance of humors. Heavy food at night stirred the phlegmatic element, cool and moist, interfering with both sleep and spiritual clarity. Cheese, being dense and slow to digest, was the biggest offender. But then, there's the fringe theory. The one whispered by a monk named Jerome in a scriptorium you passed earlier. He said, some of us think cheese doesn't cause the dreams, it reveals them. Like a lens, or a prism. You didn't know what to say to that. You just nodded, like you understood. Now, in the dark, you remember his words too well, because you were dreaming. Or maybe not. It begins subtly. The wall in your cell isn't solid anymore. It's breathing softly. The blanket is heavier than it should be. It smells of cream. The wind through your cell window coos like a mother humming a lullaby in a language you've never heard. And then you're standing not in your cell, but in a meadow lit by moons, surrounded by cows wearing halos. One of them speaks. You mustn't cut the cheese, it says. The cheese must cut you. You nod. Logic. Then blinding light. Singing monks in golden robes, hurling wheels of cheese into the sun. One whispers your name, and when you ask him what it means, he replies, you are the rind. You jolt awake, heart racing, mouth dry. You're back in your bed, or so you think. It's someone is sitting at the end of your cot. You nearly scream before realizing it's Brother Petros. His hand is on his heart. His eyes are closed. He's praying. Loudly. In Latin, for cheese, he murmurs. For forgiveness. You blink, did I? He opens one eye. You levitated briefly. You stare. I told you not to eat it, he says, standing with a sigh. But you all do, eventually. Did you? You can't remember. Historians still argue whether medieval accounts of dream visions and mystical sleep experiences were the result of nutritional deficits, psychogenic illness, or simply overactive imaginations in people living by candlelight in centuries of repetitive chants. Some suggest sleep deprivation played a bigger role. Others point to fasting patterns, or even mild hallucinogenic mold on unregulated dairy. There's also the curious case of ergotias, the hallucinogenic fungus linked to rye bread, but there is debate over whether similar agents could live in aged, unsanitary cheese. You lie back down, dazed. You definitely didn't eat cheese. Right? And yet, burp, just faintly. Tastes like cheddar. You wake again if you ever truly slept too. The unmistakable toll of a bell. It's not loud, not jarring, but insistent. Hollow, like a bronze voice clearing its throat in the middle of a dream. You sit up. The room hasn't changed. Your cot still groans beneath you. The straw still pokes. The chill still snakes down your spine despite the blanket's best efforts. But outside your narrow cell door, the cloister is stirring. Soft footsteps, whispered Latin. The rustle of robes and the faint squeak of sandals polished with ash. This is Matins' midnight prayer. The great middle-of-the-night intermission in the monastic performance that is the medieval day. It's not optional. Even if you're half asleep. Even if you dreamed of flying cheese and cows who lecture you about your moral weaknesses. You trudge from your cot. Your joints protest. A breeze finds you before your sandals do. Everything smells like wax and stone and Dodley Indians. Outside, the monks move in a slow, solemn procession toward the chapel. You shuffle in with them, trying not to stand out. The great wooden door groans as it opens. Within, the chapel is lit with a few miserly candles, just enough to define shadows. They don't speak. They sing Gregorian chant. Slow and spectral, rises like incense from tired throats. You try to follow, Though your voice cracks and stumbles, you're not used to Latin in the dark. You're not used to much of this at all. You notice Brother Petros 2 rows ahead, swaying slightly. Maybe asleep, maybe communing. Then there's Brother Marius, his eyes wide, unblinking, hands twitching as if catching invisible flies. You can't help but wonder, did they eat cheese? Your stomach turns not with hunger, but with the unease of too many ancient warnings rattling in your head. The dream still lingers somehow. The halos, the meadow, that moon-bright cow. You glance around. A few monks seem off, not in a sinister way, more like their minds are floating one step behind their bodies. And then it happens. Brother Hugo drops his candle. The flame sputters. Doesn't go out, but it casts a sudden lunging shadow across the altar. And in that brief chaos he speaks. The rind is broken, he says, loudly, in a voice that is definitely his, but also not. Everyone stops. A pause. A single beat of silence. Then, seamlessly, the chanting resumes. Hugo stands there, blinking, confused. A novice hands him a fresh candle. No one says a word. You look to the abbot, seated under the great cross. Eyes are closed, perhaps in prayer, perhaps in denial. You think back to the cheese plate you glimpsed in the refectory earlier, rounds of semi-soft dairy just sitting there, untouched, begging for mischief. Were the monks tempted? Did one of them nibble? Mainstream historians note that matins was the roughest prayer slot for monks. It demanded alertness during the body's natural sleep cycle. Any food intake before sleepy, especially the heavy sort, could stir discomfort, bloating, even hallucinations. Some abbots enforced fasting from sundown to sunrise, precisely to prevent such distractions. Others, less stringent, offered leniency, but warned against specific items, cheese among them. You watch Brother Hugo carefully. He fidgets now, muttering something that might be the creed or a recipe. As the prayer continues, you try to focus. But the chapel seems oddly fluid. Shadows move too easily. The flicker of flames makes the faces of saints on the painted wall ripple. You blink, shake your head. Beside you, a monk quietly farts. Another clears his throat with the gravitas of a man about to confess treason. A few stifled yawns roll forward like a spiritual wave. And then a low chant begins. The Psalm of the Night Watch. Its melody is slow, deliberate, designed to keep you conscious and contemplative. But instead of grounding you, it drifts, hypnotic. One phrase repeats, Custodi me, Domini, ut pupillum, ocula. Guard me, O Lord, as the apple of your eye. You close your eyes. Suddenly you're not in the chapel. You're somewhere warmer, louder. There's the sound of churning. Churn, yes, butter. Then you see it. A wheel of cheese turning slowly in midair. Round it, monks float, orbiting like sleepy moons. One of them plays a lute, another hums. A cow walks past wearing spectacles. The cheese begins to speak. Are you listening, it asks. You open your eyes with a start. Still in the chapel. Chant ends. The bell sounds again. Matins is complete. The monks begin filing out, their expressions unreadable. As you follow them back to the cloister walk, Brother Petros falls into step beside you. Good prayers tonight, he says, his first words in hours. You nod. He pauses. You saw something, didn't you? You hesitate. You chuckle softly. It's always the third night. You want to ask what that means, but he's already turned down another corridor. Historians still debate whether the visions experienced by monks during matins were mystical in origin or simply the inevitable consequence of chronic sleep. Disruption, combined with rigid dietary habits and ambient guilt. But here now, walking back to your cot through candlelight and cold air, you're not so sure it matters, 'cause something about this place and its cheese feels uncommonly vivid. Back in your cell, the chill seems worse. The candle you left unlit has mysteriously burned halfway down. You glance around for signs of tampering, but the only disturbance is a slight shift in the straw where your body used to be. Less, of course, that was someone else lying there during matins. You don't ask? Instead, you sit for a moment in the quiet hum of pre-dawn silence. Your stomach stirs again. Not hunger exactly, but discomfort. A slow, bubbling swirl of warmth and mild regret. Did you sneak a bite of cheese before bed? You can't recall, and that's unsettling. You lie down, determined to catch a little sleep before lauds. You adjust your body on the straw-stuffed mattress, pull the blanket back over you, and try to still your mind. But your thoughts drift straight to Galen of Pergamon, 2nd century physician, an ever-present ghost in medieval monasteries. His theories still ruled the body, centuries after his bones were dust. You'd seen his name scrawled on a margin of a manuscript in the scriptorium yesterday, underlined 3 times in ochre ink. Dad. The marginal note read, "Case of sour curd and choking dream." A cheerful bedside read, according to Galenic medicine. Your body is a container for 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Health came from balance, disease from excess. Nightmares, almost always an overflow of phlegm. The cool, wet humor. And guess what produces phlegm in abundance? Cheese, especially soft cheese, especially at night. You think of a monk named Brother Laurent, who insisted he once dreamed of being trapped inside a wheel of a mental, shouting Latin prayers from the holes, unable to escape. The abbot made him fast for a week afterward, on water and barley porridge. Infirmarians of the time had their own strategies to combat cheese-related ailments. You've seen one at work? A squat old monk in a lopsided cowl who offered remedies including fennel, tea-cold compresses, and this one you'll never forget. A spiritual sponge bath where the afflicted was gently wiped down with blessed vinegar while being read psalms. You asked if it worked? He gave a non-committal shrug. It stops the dreams for a while, but only if they stop the cheese. There's a whole manuscript in the Library de Somnis Formaticis, or on cheese dreams, tributed dubiously to an anonymous Carthusian. It's filled with detailed accounts of night visions supposedly induced by dairy. One chapter suggests that cheese causes the loosening of the soul's tether, which sounds beautiful until you remember that it means you're halfway to spiritual detachment. The cheese pulls you out of yourself and sends your astral form skipping across moral boundaries like a flat stone over water. That same manuscript includes drawings. Oh, the drawings. One shows a monk curled in sleep with a giant cheese wheel hovering above his head, weeping tears of milk onto his face. Another depicts what appears to be a battle between a saint and a sentient cheese with horns. You stared at that one for far too long earlier today, trying to decide if it was an allegory or autobiography. Still, not every entry condemned cheese. Some monks claimed it opened the gates of divine inspiration. A marginal note beside a dream diary read, "I saw the Virgin Mary with a platter of blue-veined Stilton. She told me to write a new hymn." You hummed the melody earlier in the garden. It was catchy. It's a bit musty. You turn in your bed again, unable to settle. The smell is still faintly there, somewhere between old wood and warm cream, kind of scent that lingers longer than memory. You sniff your own sleeves. Just wool and dust, or maybe goat. That fringe theory you heard, that cheese didn't cause dreams, it revealed them. You're starting to believe it. Like a fogged window wiped clean, letting the mind's messier contents rise to the surface. And there's another layer. The spiritual dimension. 2 monks. Sleep wasn't just rest. It was a battlefield. Temptations didn't stop at sundown. If anything, they ramped up. The body relaxed. The soul drifted. The devil, as they'd often say, never slept. It's why they broke the night with matins. It's not just to pray, but to reset. To interrupt the body's slide into indulgence, into dreams, into whatever whispered things lived in the soft folds of cheese-soaked sleep. One monk told you bluntly, if you sleep too long, Satan starts composing lullabies. You'd laughed then. You're not laughing now. Outside, you hear the moan of wind curling through a cloister arch. A door creaks open, then closed. a soft clatter ceramic. Echoes through the hall. Probably a bowl, maybe a plate. You don't dare investigate. You close your eyes. Try breathing deeply. Count your breaths. But the dreams find you again. This time you're in a cathedral made entirely of cheese. The columns are sharp wedges of parmesan. The pews are cheddar blocks. The altar, a soft bubbling camembert, dripping onto the marble floor. You kneel, and it welcomes you with open rind. Cows moo in harmony. A wheel of Gouda hovers above your head like a halo. You wake once more with a start. Your mouth tastes of cream, your pillow, slightly damp. And when you roll over, your hand brushes something cool and wrapped in cloth beneath the bed. You freeze. You draw it out slowly. It's a small wheel of cheese, perfectly aged, wrapped in linen. No note, no explanation. Just the quiet promise of another round of dreams. You sit upright in your cot, the soft shape of the cheese wheel heavy in your lap. The linen wrapping is still faintly warm, as if it had been hidden close to someone's body before it found its way beneath your bed. You stare at it. It stares back. Figuratively, of course, though you can't quite shake the feeling that it's somehow aware. The bell has stopped tolling. Matins is over. The halls are quiet again. Most monks have returned to their cells for their second sleep, a well-documented feature of monastic life. First sleep after Compline Matins in the middle, second sleep until lauds. Second sleep, they say, is the strange one. In this segment of night, the mind loosens. The line between dream and waking stretches thin. And tonight, yours is already frayed. You consider disposing of the cheese. Maybe returning it to the refectory. Or hurling it into the compost trench behind the latrines. But instead, you set it gently on your cot, as if it were a relic. Sacred. Forbidden. You lie back down. Close your eyes. But just as sleep begins to gather its soft folds around you, a sound interrupts. A murmuring low and rhythmic. It's not quite prayer. It's not quite speech. You rise and open the cell door a crack. Down the hall, a dim light glows. Shadows shift along the walls like they're arguing. You slip out barefoot, padding silently toward the sound. The chapel is dark, but the warming room just beyond flickers with candlelight. Step inside and find a circle of monks seated cross-legged around a small wooden table. Upon it, arranged with almost absurd care, is a spread of midnight contraband. Dried figs, 2 loaves of bread, and 5 wheels of cheese. Small monk with enormous ears spots you and grins. Couldn't sleep? You don't answer, but your expression does the talking. Brother Hilarion, a name you recognize now, beckons you forward. Come sit. We call this the Fellowship of the Rind. No one laughs. But several monks smile with the weary affection of men who know how ridiculous they sound at 2 a.m. You sit. A plate is passed. The cheese is sliced with reverence. A knife passed hand to hand like a sacred object. You receive a modest wedge, nothing extravagant. But the flavor, once you take the bite, is transcendent. A sheep's milk blend, sharp with just enough sweetness to suggest smuggled honey. This one's from Aragon, says Brother Hilarion, nodding proudly. Brought in with the pilgrim wine shipment. We do not speak of it aloud. The others nod. Mainstream history confirms that despite strict dietary guidelines, many monasteries quietly cultivated luxuries, cheese, wine, even sugared fruit, often rationalized as gifts for the abbot or pilgrim's hospitality. In reality, these were the humble indulgences that made cloistered life bearable. But indulging after dark, that was different. That was flirtation with the soul's soft underbelly. Do you ever dream? You ask quietly, chewing. All heads turn toward you. Several monks chuckle. All the time, one says. Every night, murmurs another. Last week I saw St. Cuthbert and a raccoon playing backgammon, says a third, with a dreamy smile. Not a raccoon, brother, Hilarion corrects gently. A badger. He says that every week. A silence follows. You savor another bite. Then Brother Hilarian's voice drops low, almost conspiratorial. You want to know the truth? He asks. You nod. We don't eat the cheese to dream. We eat it to see the dreams. You blink. Streams. He shrugs. Yours, mine, the monasteries, the walls, who knows? This isn't doctrine, it's folklore. It's maternal monastery mythology, half believed, half joked about until no one remembers the difference. Still, it gets under your skin, because even as you sit there, wrapped in warmth, surrounded by slouching monks, whispering absurd tales of cheese-fueled visions, a part of you knows you've never felt more awake. And yet your eyes droop. The warmth of the room, the richness of the cheese, the low murmur of ancient voices, it all folds around you like a blanket stitched from someone else's dreams. One monk nods off mid-sentence. Another begins singing an off-key hymn about St. Agatha and a wheelbarrow. Nobody corrects him. No one seems to remember if it's real. Historians still argue. Brother Hilarion murmurs. Whether midnight feasts like these were acts of quiet rebellion or informal ritual, maybe both. Maybe monks needed dreams as much as they needed sleep. You realize then, these aren't rule breakers. They're custodians of something older, something softer, a monasticism of milk and mystery. You rise slowly. Excuse yourself with a bow. No one stops you. As you walk back through the corridor, your head hums, not with music, with softness, a warm buttery blur in the brain. Back in your cell, the wheel of cheese you left is gone. In its place, a folded scrap of parchment. You open it. It reads, "Sleep lightly. The rind is thin tonight." You lie back down, smiling, not sure whether to be comforted or slightly unnerved. Your dreams that night are gentle, nonsensical, and oddly musical. A cloister of monks harmonizing in minor key. A goat who teaches you algebra. A floating wedge of cheddar that blesses your shoulders and says, "Go forth." And you do. Morning comes not with light, but with the first dull groan of the Laud's bell echoing through the stonework like an old man clearing his throat. You barely feel awake, yet your body moves automatically, now trained by ancient rhythms, shepherded by silence. The hallway is cold as always, but something in you is warmer. You shuffle toward the chapel again, passing other monks rubbing their eyes, some already humming the chant they'll be required to sing in 20 minutes. One monk stumbles slightly and mutters an apology in Latin to the floor. Brother Petros catches your eye. His expression says everything. You made it. During lauds, you stand in the back. The candlelight dances across the choir stalls, illuminating worn faces and the occasional nose twitch from someone still half dreaming. The chants are slower now, more melodic. It's less about vigilance, more about gratitude. You try to join in, but your throat feels heavy, like it still holds the echo of dreams you haven't shaken off. Afterward, you break your fast with a thin broth and half a crust of yesterday's bread. The cheese is gone, hidden again, back in whatever crypt or hollowed-out psalter the fellowship uses. The monks chew in silence. Occasionally one will smile to themselves, a private memory floating up like a bubble. You sit beside Brother Petros. "Did you sleep?" he asks softly. "Not exactly," you reply. He nods. "That's good. You were supposed to listen." Before you can ask what that means, he stands and clears his bowl with the others. You decide to visit the infirmary. It's located beyond the main cloister. Tucked under a low arch and marked with a cracked fresco of St. Luke pouring olive oil into someone's ear. Comforting. Inside, the air is filled with the sharp scent of sage and vinegar. A hunched figure in a brown robe looks up from a scroll. "You're early," he says. "Or you're ill." "I'm curious," you reply. ... Cheese, he snorts. "Aren't we all?" He introduces himself as Brother Galterius, the monastery's unofficial physician and very official gossip collector. His scroll, he says, is a catalog of all reported nighttime afflictions. You ask to see the list. He lets you. It's absurd. Beautifully absurd. Entries include night palpitations after goat's milk brie, excessive sweating with dreams of flying toast, post-uncontrollable weeping, possible blue mold exposure, lustful murmuring in Latin, The patient reportedly spooned a wedge of cheese mid-sleep. You try to stifle a laugh. Brother Galterius doesn't. I keep records, he says, eyes twinkling, but no one takes them seriously. Not even the abbot. But I've been here 32 years. I know things. And I know what happens when the cheese gets too ripe. You ask him whether he thinks the cheese causes the dreams. He waves a hand. That's the wrong question. The better question is, why are we afraid of them? You pause. Monks dream every night, he continues. We live in silence, read by candlelight, suppress every urge, pray through our exhaustion. Of course we dream, but it's only when we eat, when we indulge, that we believe that dreams are dangerous. You chew on that figuratively this time. He hands you a small leather-bound booklet. Inside are diagrams crudely drawn, but detailed, bedeased with labeled humors. Foods aligned with spiritual virtues, several diagrams of the brain, each with a note in the margin. Do not feed before midnight. This, he says, was copied from a German abbey. They believe cheese affects the soul wind. You raise an eyebrow? It's not my term, he adds quickly. They think that digestive vapors rise and swirl through the brain like incense, disturbing the angelic order of the mind. Is that widely accepted? He shrugs. Historians still argue. Some say it's metaphor. Others say monks just needed a reason not to be bored. He hands you a small pouch. Inside is fennel. For the stomach, and for protection. You thank him and rise. As you leave, he calls after you. If you see the flying cow again, ask her about my gout. You chuckle, but the air outside feels cooler now, brighter. Morning light finally creeps into the cloister, laying gold stripes across the stones. Back in the scriptorium, monks are already at their desks, copying, illuminating, doodling. You peer over a shoulder and spot a tiny, marginalia figure, what looks suspiciously like a monk wrestling a wedge of cheese with a sword. The scribe glances up, completely straight-faced. It's allegory, of course, you say. You turn a corner and pause beneath a large tapestry. Saint Benedict, serene and radiant, stands beneath a tree, arms outstretched. Birds gather at his feet. Behind him, in the shadows, a small table holds a wheel of cheese. You never noticed it before. You leave the tapestry behind, its embroidered cheese now etched permanently into your brain. The cloister fills slowly with the measured rhythms of monastic routine, scraping sandals on stone, the slap of wet laundry, the dry flutter of vellum pages turning. But under all that, there's a hum faint, persistent, as if the walls themselves remember the dreams you and others keep trying to forget. You turn toward the library, following the scent of beeswax polish and brittle leather. It's where the dreams go, after all, not discarded, catalogued. Inside, the air is thick with dust and stillness. Shelves rise like medieval skyscrapers filled with codices bound in calfskin, sheep's vellum, and, in one case, bark. Brother Alred sits at the central desk, carefully indexing something that looks very much like a saint's grocery list. He barely looks up. You're here for the cheese scrolls. You blink. Yes. He nods. Everyone comes after the second dream. You don't recall telling him about your first, but you let that slide. He shuffles to a side shelf and draws out a volume bound in soft leather, its title embossed in gold leaf. Somnia, Formaticis, et Divini, Illusions. You open it carefully. Inside are illustrations more polished than the infirmary's crude drawings. One shows St. Ambrose seated at a table, tears rolling down his cheeks as a spectral wheel of cheese hovers overhead. Another features a monk asleep in his cell, his soul drawn upward like smoke into a celestial dairy. Are these meant to be literal, you ask? Brother Alred shrugs. Who knows? Medieval monks recorded visions the way we record weather, routine, intermittently terrifying, and usually blamed on supper. You laugh, but he's not joking. The text beside the illustration reads, "He consumed of the soft rind, and beheld 7 angels milking the stars. Upon waking, he wept for 3 days." You sit with that for a moment, then he flips a few pages and lands on a tale that catches your eye. The case of Brother Anselm and the talking sheep. Anselm, it says, was a scribe known for abstinence so strict he once fasted through Lent and Advent by mistake. But one evening, he accepted a slice of monastery-made cheese goat, soft, slightly overripe. That night, he dreamed of a sheep who spoke in flawless Greek and told him secrets of the cosmos. When he woke, he could no longer write the letter A ever again. Even his name became Anselm. The record doesn't explain what this meant theologically, but the story spread. To this day, an old monastery on the Loire still refers to cheese served with fruit as Anselm's curse. Historians still argue whether these stories reflect genuine mystical experiences or merely imaginative digestion. Alred notes, leaning over your shoulder. But what matters is that monks believe them. You flip forward to a chapter titled Vita Cassietta, or Lives of the Cheesy. A clearly tongue-in-cheek section but filled with entries nonetheless. One recounts the tale of 3 monks from different abbeys, who each reported the same dream on the same night, a table suspended in the sky, laden with cheese and a voice saying, "Eat and be filled, for the rind shall be your crown." The abbots, predictably, ordered a fast. Cheese was locked away, but one monk brother Tancred hid a wedge beneath the altar. Days later, during Sext, he began reciting sermons backward and claimed he could see through walls. Was he mad, or merely? Well-fed Alred closes the book gently. You won't find resolution here, he says. Only patterns, echoes, hints that maybe, in the right context, cheese does open doors. To what? That, he says, depends on the monk. As you leave the library, your head swims with images. Floating tables, weeping saints, Greek-speaking sheep. You cross the cloister garden, where the sun is finally strong enough to cast real warmth. A few bees hover lazily near the rosemary. You sit for a moment on the stone bench beside the fountain. It's peaceful here, grounding. The kind of calm that makes you question whether any of this is real, or if your dreams have simply spilled into waking. Then you hear it, the low mutter of Brother Henry. He's seated on the opposite bench, head bowed, hands clasped not in prayer, but in something closer to negotiation. You inch closer. "No more blue mold, I swear," he murmurs. "You promised me clarity, and all I got was goose sounds." You pause. Goose sounds. He glances up and sees you. "Oh, hello." He doesn't look embarrassed, just tired, and mildly disappointed in whatever invisible force he's been consulting. Sit beside him. Say nothing. Eventually, he speaks again. Started with, he confesses. "Just a little at dinner. The dreams were ... enlightening. I saw a road made of cheese curds leading to a flaming spoon. Then came the visions during the day. Geese in the walls, Latin palindromes and tree bark. I thought I'd been chosen." You don't interrupt. "But now," he continues, voice low, "I just feel hollow. Like the rind after someone scooped out all the meaning." You nod slowly. Maybe too much cheese is too much cheese. He considers this, or not enough bread. Fair point. He stands, straightens his robe. "I've been called to testify." "Testify a tribunal," he says, sighing. "The cheese trial." Again you blink. "That's a real thing." "Oh yes," he says. "It's quite boring. But we wear special hats." He walks off toward the abbot's study, muttering to himself about dairy-induced metaphysics and the suspicious disappearance of a wheel of soft sheep. She's named Hortensia. You sit there a while longer, wondering, is everyone here mad? Or is madness simply the price of curiosity? You don't follow Brother Henry. Not yet. The tribunal can wait. Instead, you wander slowly back, toward your cell, thinking about that phrase he used. The rind after someone scooped out all the meaning. It sticks with you like a piece of overripe brie on the roof of your mind. The hallway is quiet now, painted gold by slats of sunlight sliding through narrow windows. A few monks pass with their heads down, one carrying a bucket, another with a broom. None speak. Their faces bear the same expression, a blend of focus and deep distraction, like men trying to remember a forgotten dream mid-task. As you round the corner, you catch sight of something curious on the wall. A chalk circle. It's faint, half rest by a mop, but still visible. About 2 feet wide, roughly drawn, with what looks like 3 dots in its center, you crouch down. It surrounds nothing. No object, no offering, no mark of furniture or spill. Just the stones dry, unremarkably, circled deliberately in white. Demon trap, a voice says behind you. You spin around. It's Brother Egbert, thin as a heron, hunched like a question mark. His eyes are sunken, but alert. You're unfamiliar, he adds. New to the cheese watch. I know, I'm just observing. Good, he nods. Best not to touch it. The circle's meant to contain what he sniffs. Whatever comes when someone eats Saint Morte after sunset, you glance again at the chalk. This happened recently? He looks grim. Every fortnight, give or take. We've been keeping a record. He gestures for you to follow. Down another hallway, through a wooden door that creaks like a guilty conscience, and into what must have once been a storeroom. Now it's filled with scrolls pinned along the walls, scraps of parchment, bits of broken chalk. At the center, a table covered in drawn circles and Latin annotations. This is the dormitory watch archive, he says proudly. Our task is simple. Record and respond to disturbances brought on by improper cheese consumption after Compline. There's a long pause before he adds, and sometimes before terse. If there's been a feast day, you study the scrolls. Some are detailed, names, times, symptoms. Others are more poetic, dreamed of bells filled with butter. Woke with mouth open, humming Ave Maria. Sister Constance walked the hallway backward, chanting, Rennet is sin, Rennet is sin. I heard mooing in my pillow. Are these ... exorcisms? You ask, nodding toward a stack of candles and a small, dented censer. Of a sort, Brother Egbert shrugs. We prefer the term spiritual tempering, and this is all because of cheese. He gives you a look. Cheese is the door. What walks through depends on the monk. Mainstream records of medieval monasteries do indeed contain mentions of dormitory. Disturbances blamed on digestion or devilry, though rarely both at once. Some abbeys, particularly in France and parts of Iberia, reportedly conducted sleep assessments on monks who experienced repeated visions. The causes were usually attributed to spiritual weakness. Once or twice, documents mention dietary influence. Historians still argue whether these disturbances were psychosomatic or a clever way to excuse nocturnal behavior. Otherwise punishable by penance, Egbert muses. But we who serve the watch know better. You spot another chalk circle drawn on a small wooden tablet nearby. In its center is a smear of cheese rind. We don't trap demons, Egbert says, tapping the table. We invite them, briefly, and we ask questions. Your eyebrows rise involuntarily. Questions, of course. They're already here, why waste the opportunity? You lean in. The chalk markings are intricate. Latin phrases curled like vines, little arrows pointing inward. In the center, a name half-faded as Lactorius, the demon of excessive dairy indulgence, Egbert explains. He's really more of a spirit minor class, the patron of bloated dreams and ambiguous guilt. You open your mouth to ask something, but he raises a bony finger. Don't worry. He's only dangerous if paired with fig compote. You manage a nervous laugh. Or maybe it's real. Then Egbert sighs and lowers himself onto a stool. It wasn't always this way. The fear, the secrecy. Monks used to embrace the dream world. They believed night visions could be sacred. You nod slowly. So what changed? Fear changed, he says. A few bad dreams. A few embarrassing incidents. One too many monks confessing to flying on cheese clouds over the Sea of Galilee. It became easier to demonize it. He gestures to the scrolls. And so, we trap what we once welcomed. Outside, a bell chimes faintly, the signal for sext, Midday prayer. Egbert looks toward the door. Time to pray. Perhaps today we'll ask for wisdom, or at least better stomachs. You thank him and step back into the corridor. The light has shifted again softer now, blushing with late morning sun. The chalk circle lingers in your mind. Not the demon in the center, but the monk who drew it. Later that afternoon, you find yourself deep beneath the abbey, following Brother Petros through a narrow stone corridor lit only by the stub of a beeswax candle. The air down here smells of damp linen, mold, and something tangy. Not unpleasant exactly, but persistent. We're going to the crypt, Petros says over his shoulder, as if that explains anything. You don't argue. You've stopped questioning much of anything. The stairs are uneven, worn by centuries of sandaled feet. At the bottom is a heavy iron-bound door, which Petros opens with the world-weariness of a man who's done this 1,000 times and still hasn't. He decided how he feels about it. The crypt is surprisingly tidy. No scattered bones, no ghoulish statues. It's just rows of niches along the walls, most sealed with carved stone plaques. Some bear names, others just symbols. You pass one etched with a simple goat and a wheel of cheese. Inhumation with affection, Petros mutters. Brother Ambrose, died 1181. Swore he met St. Augustine in a wedge of rebloken. You smile, expecting a joke. But Petros says nothing more. In the center of the crypt is a low wooden platform on which rest several small barrels. Linen-wrapped bundles, and most significantly 3 enormous wheels of cheese. You stop short. Welcome, he says, to the chamber of preservation. You raise an eyebrow? We're aging cheese. In the crypt? He nods. We age monks too, technically. That earns your first genuine laugh in hours. Petros walks to one of the wheels and lifts the cloth gently. The rind is thick, grayish-white, and slightly cracked. Yet the scent hits you immediately, deep, nutty, with a hint of ammonia, monastic, definitively so. This one's nearly 5 years old, he says. Call it Thaddeus. You lean in, intrigued. Is it still edible? He considers. If you ask the abbot, no. If you ask the fellowship, possibly divine. You kneel beside the platform, running your fingers gently along the cool cloth of the adjacent bundle. Is there a reason it's down here? Petros hesitates. It was safer than the pantry. You glance around at the tombs. Because of spoilage? Or temptation? He grimaces. Because of manifestations. He goes still. Brother Guzom once tasted a sliver of Thaddeus at Lodz. He continues. Claimed he saw the bones of saints singing beneath the floor. Said they hummed the Dies Irae in perfect 4-part harmony. 3 days later he tried to dig up the choir stalls to find the source. You nod slowly. Oh. That would explain the scratches I noticed. Historians still argue, Petros says with a crooked smile, whether Guillaume had merely snapped under pressure or whether the cheese simply brought something through. You step away from Thaddeus, just in case. These wheels are reserved, he explains, for study, for deeper reflection. When a monk reaches a certain point in their spiritual journey, he may request a sliver. After considerable fasting, supervision, you glance around. This doesn't seem entirely sanctioned. He shrugs. Neither does faith, half the time. As he lifts another cloth, revealing a pail. Dry-rinded cheese labeled Gregorius U spots small sigils carved in the platform beneath it. Protective markings, runes, Latin inscriptions. You lean closer. One reads, See Somnias, Cave-lac. If you dream, beware the milk. You stand, heart strangely light. There's an odd comfort to all of this. The solemnity with which they preserve the cheese. The reverence for its effects. The barely contained awe of dairy that may or may not unlock visions of the divine. It's ridiculous. And yet Petros begins wrapping the wheels again. We store them like relics, he says. Not because they are holy, but because they remind us that holiness doesn't always wear a crown. There's something sacred about that. You help him carry a small bundle, likely just cloths, not contraband, back up the stairs. As you do, your fingers brush a faint smear of rind on the wooden railing. You don't lick it. You're not that curious. Yet, back in the main corridor, you part ways. He returns to the chapel. You for some reason drift back toward the novice dormitory. Not your assigned space, but somehow, instinct leads you there. The novices' hall is quieter than expected. Few sit cross-legged on the floor, polishing brass candlesticks. One's asleep on a prayer pillow. Another reads a scroll sideways, but the room's atmosphere feels thick. You move slowly down the row of cots, glancing at the footlockers and prayer beads, until you find one that doesn't look like the others. Beneath it, another chalk circle. Inside it, nothing. Yet again, you crouch down. But this time, you notice something faint in the stone. Lines too fine for chalk. Etched, not drawn. A spiral. A rind. You hear a cough behind you. It's Brother Hugo. He stands with his arms folded, face unreadable. You've seen the cheese. You nod. He looks down at the spiral. Then you've seen its trail. You frown. What does it mean? He kneels beside you, tracing the spiral with one gnarled finger. It means, he whispers, that some wheels still roll, even after they're gone. The tribunal convenes just after Vespers, in a side chamber usually reserved for disputes over sheep rotation and the proper handling of basil cuttings. Today, however, the room hums with quiet tension and the distinct scent of aged dairy. You take a seat in the back, flanked by two novices, who seem far too interested in the proceedings. The ceiling is low. Candles flicker. A small wooden table stands at the center, behind which sits the abbot in full habit, flanked by two solemn-faced elders who look like they haven't blinked since Advent. At the far side of the room stands Brother Henry, the defendant. He appears unbothered. In fact, he's beaming faintly, as if he's the guest of honor at a particularly sleepy banquet. His hair is a mess. There is a visible streak of what looks suspiciously like soft cheese across the hem of his robe. Let the record show, intones the abbot. The Brother Henry has been summoned to account for recent nocturnal irregularities, including but not limited to chanting. Psalm 23 in a falsetto, trying to baptize the bell rope, and reciting the rule of St. Benedict to a goat. There's a collective twitch of robes. One monk coughs quietly. Brother Henry raises a finger. In fairness, he says, the goat initiated the conversation. The abbot does not smile. He continues. It has also come to light that Brother Henry consumed a quantity of unauthorized cheese after Compline, sourced according to the fellowship from the crypt. A quiet gasp from the audience. One novice drops his prayer rope. Henry bows slightly. That I cannot deny. The abbot sighs, as if he were expecting denial, and is disappointed not to have the energy to argue. Brother Henry, he begins, you are aware of the protocols surrounding post-Vespers dietary restraint? Henry nods. You are aware of the consequences recorded historically, spiritually, and gastrointestinally. Henry nods again. And yet you proceeded. He clasps his hands reverently, with great care and an open heart. Historians still argue. The elder to the abbot's left mutters, whether open hearts or open stomachs are the greater risk to the order. Silence, the abbot says gently, before folding his hands. Proceed. Henry steps forward. No notes, no defense parchment. Just a clear voice and a slightly deranged twinkle in his eye. I did indeed consume the cheese known as Gregorius. Aged beneath the cloister floor for 4 winters, swaddled in linen, rubbed with rosemary oil, and guarded by the prayers of 12 generations. He pauses for dramatic effect. And yes, I did dream. But what I saw, dear brothers, was no nightmare. He begins to pace. I saw a library floating in the sky, where each book was a different scent. I saw a river of milk that sang psalms backward and forward at once. I saw Saint Swithin riding a butter churn into battle against a dragon made of burnt toast. He raises a hand. And most importantly, most sacredly, I saw our abbey, its very abbey, suspended upon a wheel of cheese that turned with the seasons, fed by the prayers of the mice beneath. Silence. You're not sure whether to clap or hide under your chair. The abbot exhales slowly. Brother Henry, we appreciate the poetic nature of your Vision. Henry bows. However, we must uphold the rule. The consumption of potent rind after Compline, especially without supervision, is forbidden for a reason. It leads to precisely this kind of disruption. Henry starts to speak, but the abbot raises a hand. That being said, he continues, this tribunal also recognizes the long-standing tradition of cheese-induced sacred insight. Noted in the Chronicles of St. Melchior, the Canticles of St. Agnes of Rochefort, and the less reliable, though widely circulated, Brie Scrolls. A respectful chuckle ripples through the room. Therefore, the tribunal delivers the following sentence. Brother Henry is to undergo a period of reflection, 3 days of silence, 2 days of bland food, and 1 night of supervised dream journaling. He is to abstain from all cheeses classified as aromatic or personality forming until Michaelmas. Henry bows deeply. With gratitude, the tribunal rises. The candles flicker. It's over. As the monks file out, the novices whisper furiously. One turns to you. Do you think the cheese really showed him Saint Swithin? You shrugged. I think it showed him something. Outside, the evening air is cool and quiet. The garden is empty, save for a few crickets and the occasional snore from a distant bench. You wander toward the well, the stars just beginning to pierce the sky. And there, sitting cross-legged beside the well, is Henry. You sit beside him. You did well. You say. He nods, gazing upward. They never believe you, not really, he murmurs. But they know, deep down. We've all had the dream at some point. What dream? He smiles. The one where the cheese speaks your name? You both sit in silence for a long time. Then Henry stands. Come, he says. I know where they're keeping the Santal Bray. You hesitate, just a moment. Then you rise and follow. You're not quite sure how you end up beneath the laundry hall. It's not on any official map, if such maps exist, and there's no sign marking the entrance. Henry simply ducks behind a row of drying cassocks, pulls aside a linen sheet, and reveals a narrow staircase carved into the stone floor, hidden beneath a pile of spare sandals. You hesitate. This seems highly irregular. Henry grins. So's divine revelation. Sides. It's not as secret as they like to pretend. He descends with confidence, and you follow, ducking under a low beam, your fingers trailing along the cool stone walls. The air is close, stale but not musty. It smells oddly fragrant, not floral, not clean. No, it smells like damp wool, dust, and a whisper of cheese rind. The tunnel leads into a tiny room square, silent, and lit by a single tallow lamp in a wall niche. A small wooden chest sits in the center. Nothing else. No altar, no furnishings. But something about the space feels devotional. Henry kneels before the chest. This, he says, is the Psalter. You frown? A chest? No, he chuckles. Well, yes, but not for books. For Brie. He lifts the lid with reverence. Inside, nestled between folded linen cloths and a packet of dried bay leaves, lies a wheel of Santal Bray, or something pretending to be it. The rind is orange, crimped like petals, forming the shape of a flower. Its surface glows faintly in the candlelight. She's a mild one, Henry says. Looks innocent. Smells like heaven. Dreams like thunder. He reaches in and breaks off the tiniest sliver thin as communion wafer and hands it to you. You pause. Is this ... safe? He shrugs. Safe? No. Enlightening, probably. You sniff it. Nutty sweet, with a slight pungency that tickles the nose. You eat it. Nothing happens. Then everything does. You're still in the room, but it's deeper now, like it's expanded without changing size. The air thickens, folds, becomes silk. The candle doesn't flicker, yet its light begins to dance. Henry seems farther away, or closer. You blink, and you see it. A procession. Dozens of monks, faceless and glowing, walking in silence across a sea of rippling cheese. Each carries a book made of bark. Their mouths move, but the sound is music, not soon emitted, like incense from a censer. Their path winds upward, spiraling into a sky stitched with golden curds. You hear a voice, gentle, crisp. You are within the Rhine now. You don't respond. You wouldn't know how. Then comes a vision. You, older, seated in the library, copying scrolls in ink made from blackberry and cream. Your robe is patched, your eyes serene. You are humming. Then it fades. Henry is watching you carefully. Saw something, didn't you? You nod slowly. I think I saw ... the future. He pats the lid of the Psalter. She's generous with those. You sit down against the wall, breath unsteady. The sliver of cheese has left no aftertaste, but your mouth feels ... blessed, like you've been drinking light. How often do you come here? You ask. Only when I need to remember, he replies. We all forget, eventually. The rule, the chants, the names of the saints. But the cheese-it remembers for us. You frown. Hey, that's not in any theological manual I've seen. Exactly, he says. The good stuff never is. He closes the chest with a soft click and extinguishes the lamp. The room folds back into darkness. But you still feel its warmth. You climb the stairs in silence, emerging once more into the ordinary world. Cassocks fluttering in the breeze, monks scolding a goose, the rhythmic thunk of someone chopping turnips behind the refectory. But you are not the same. And the cheese in the Psalter still glows, somewhere beneath your feet. Later that evening, you sit in the dormitory with a Psalter of your own actual one, this time-and attempt to focus on the Latin. But the letters shimmer a little, as the ink seems to curve inward, spiraling like the dream path from the vision. You can't help yourself. You open the book's cover. Inside, someone has hollowed a shallow cavity into the pages. Nestled within, a soft packet, wrapped in oilcloth, a wedge of cheese. Still faintly warm? You stare at the packet inside the Psalter for a long time, half expecting it to vanish if you blink. The oilcloth is creased but clean, carefully folded. This wasn't smuggled in haste. It was placed quietly, lovingly, as if whoever hid it knew that someday someone like you would open this book not for the word, but for the rind. You lift it out. It's soft, warm, not just from the book's embrace, but as though it had been resting in someone's lap, soaking in contemplation. Unfold the cloth with the delicacy of a monk turning a relic. Inside a wedge of cheese, creamy and gold, lightly veined, the rind blooming like a fine parchment's edge. You've seen this before? Earlier today in the scriptorium, you noticed a doodle in the margin of a manuscript, a monk asleep. A cheese goblin perched on his chest, whispering Latin declensions into his ear. You'd assumed it was a joke. Now, you're not so sure. You sniff. The cheese smells like toasted hay, elderflower, and dodly old vellum. You glance around the dormitory. Most of the other monks have dozed off. A few sway gently, still murmuring psalms in their sleep. One is curled around a candle stub like a cat with a radiator. You break off a fragment of the wedge, smaller than a fingernail. You let it rest on your tongue. It dissolves without a fight. And then your vision dissolves with it. You're no longer in the dormitory. You're in a field, beneath a sky lit with 9 moons. Each one glows a different shade of cream. There is music soft, burbling, like water boiling over cheesecloth. Ahead of you, a long table stretches into the horizon. Every seat is filled with monks smiling, bearded, bald, female, spectral, glowing. They nod as you approach. One stands. You recognize him, the figure from the doodle. He speaks. In the beginning was the curd, and the curd was with God, and the curd was God. You want to laugh? You try. Instead you weep. Softly, quietly, like someone who's just remembered an old song they never knew they'd forgotten. Back in the dormitory, you wake with your face pressed into the Psalter. The cheese wedge is gone. The oilcloth remains, now folded perfectly again. Beside you lies your quill, but you didn't bring it with you. You sit up, blinking away the residue of the vision. But something inside you feels reordered, like your spine's been alphabetized. You head to the scriptorium. It's after dark, but the door creaks open at your touch. Inside, a few monks work by lamplight, scratching ink onto calfskin. One gestures to the empty desk beside him. You sit. You don't ask what you're meant to do. You already know. You take up your quill and turn to a fresh folio. The page is blank. And then, with no hesitation, you begin to write. Not scripture, not doctrine, but a new entry in a different kind of gospel. You title it Liber Lactis Somniorum, the Book of Milky Dreams. You write of the moons, the table, the monks with laughter in their eyes. You describe the flavors that spoke words, the cheese that dissolved fear, the music of bubbling whey beneath a sky that hummed with cowbells tuned to minor key. You write with clarity, with grace, with speed. Hours pass, maybe days. Other monks come and go. Some pause to read over your shoulder. None interrupt. At some point, Brother Hilarion appears. He reads a page, smiles faintly, and places a wedge of hard crystalline cheese beside your hand. You don't eat it, not yet, but its presence blesses the air like incense. The scriptorium slowly transforms into a sacred kitchen. Margins fill with doodles again, only now they're not jokes. One shows a wheel of cheese as a celestial diagram. Another, monks building a cathedral from cheddar blocks. And one, a holy man rides a cloud of curds toward the horizon. They're beautiful, and no one stops them. Later, as you stretch your aching back and flex ink-stained fingers, you glance across the room and spot Brother Ambrosine, Shanchtum, silent, folded in a robe like a forgotten scroll. He meets your eyes, then nods slowly. You understand. He's seen it too. The cheese doesn't just cause dreams, collects them. Historians still argue whether such marginalia was devotional, satirical, or simply the result of too much time and too little sleep. But to the monks who lived it, it wasn't argument, it was liturgy. The night deepens, and as your candle flickers its last, you close the folio. The ink dries like breath on glass. You carry it to the library, nestle it beside a text on monastic fasting and a treatise on holy slumber. It fits perfectly, like it's always belonged. And as you walk back to your cell, hands still smelling faintly of ink and dairy, you feel something settle within you. Not sleep, not hunger, but peace. The next morning dawns without ceremony. No bells, no birdsong, just the faint ache in your fingers from writing all night, and the slow awareness that something has shifted, not outside but within. You rise from your cot, joints creaking, and slip quietly into the corridor. The monastery is still sleeping off matins, and the stones under your feet are cooler than usual, as though the building itself is sighing into its second sleep. You skip the refectory. You're not hungry, not for barley or broth, not even for bread, but in the cloister garden, something draws you, a sound, or maybe a scent. As you push open the weather-worn door, you find Brother Petros already seated beneath the apricot tree, chewing meditatively. He raises an eyebrow at you and holds out a palm. Resting in it is a small wedge of goat cheese, wrapped in a sliver of fig leaf. Morning penance, he says. Or morning heresy, depending on who you ask. You sit beside him. Do we ever get in trouble for this? You ask, accepting the offering. We do, he says. That's part of the ritual. You nibble? The cheese is cool, clean, with a tang that bites the tongue before dissolving into something almost floral. Your eyes close. It's not a vision, not a dream, just a taste. Simple, centering. Petros leans back. There was a time, he says, when we didn't fear eating after dark. Before the rule hardened. Before someone decided that God only whispered during hunger. You glance over. So when did snacking become sin? He shrugs. When the church got organized. When silence became synonymous with obedience. when joy became ... suspicious. He chuckles, low and dry. Cheese is joy. Dangerous, delightful, too alive joy. You sit for a while watching the wind curl through the rosemary, the bees too lazy to sting. Then he says it. Some monks believe night cheese doesn't just cause dreams, they say it carries them. You turn to him, curious. That somewhere, he continues, in every monastery, there's a hidden ledger, not ink on parchment, but impressions left in the rind. Every bite remembers a vision. Every wheel is a diary. You smile. Sounds like a metaphor, maybe. Or maybe the dreams are cumulative. Pass monk to monk, wheel to wheel. You think of the chamber beneath the laundry, the crypt, the chalk circles, the scrolls pinned to walls in a forgotten room. You believe it. After midday prayer, you walk with Brother Hugo around the perimeter wall. He's quieter than usual. You're almost surprised when he speaks. I've been reassigned, he says, to the garden cloister. Less exposure, you frown, because of the tribunal. He nods. They think the dreams are catching. Are they? He stops walking, and then, yes, but not in the way they fear. Later in the library, you retrieve Liber Lactis Somniorum. It's right where you left it, though a fresh page has been added. Not your handwriting. It reads, last night, I dreamed I was a wheel of cheese, and every slice they cut from me sang a different chant. None were wrong, none were right. They simply were. No signature. You smile. Before bed, you return to your psalter. Not the hollowed one, your original. The one with the page corners worn from weeks of chanting. You turn to Psalm 4. In peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. Then you reach beneath your cot. No cheese tonight. You've chosen fasting, not from fear, but respect. You lie down. You let the dark come. And when the dreams arrive, because of course, they do, they're quieter now. Smaller, not celestial banquets or rivers of curds. Just you, kneeling in a field at dusk, breaking bread with monks whose faces shift with every blink. You ask no questions, you receive no answers. Only this, the sense that you are part of a dream passed down like a song, soft and circular and wrapped in linen. In the morning, you find a folded note beneath your blanket. It reads, you've been accepted into the watch. Report at matins. Bring crackers. You arrive at the gate to the cheese cellar just before matins, bundled in your thickest robe and carrying a small pouch of unleavened crackers, because apparently protocol matters.
Oh.
Brother Hilarion waits for you at the entrance, cloaked in shadows, holding an unlit lantern and humming something that might be Gregorian chant, or might be an early medieval drinking song. With him is Brother Egbert, chalk dust streaking his sleeves, already scribbling notes into a scroll despite the near dark. It's punctual, Egbert says, not looking up. That's a good sign. You nod. Hilarion motions for silence, lifts the lantern, and leads you into the corridor. No words pass between you. None are needed. It's the sort of hush reserved for funerals or extremely illegal cheese tastings. The door creaks open, revealing the vault, the cool, breathing heart of the monastery's dairy consciousness. Barrels and bundles line the perimeter, but at the center, lit from below by 3 wax tapers, is a single wheel of cheese, round, pale, impossibly smooth. This, Egbert whispers, is cardiformage. You blink. That's not Latin. It is now, Hilarion mutters. You approach. The cheese rests atop a polished marble disc inscribed with faint text. You make out phrases like Visus Interior, Congregatio Lactis, and Custodes Somniorum, guardians of the dreams. The watch, Hilarion explains, doesn't just monitor. We ... listen. To what? To the rind, Egbert says, matter of fact. And the dreams that cling to it. He hands you a thin sliver, barely thicker than a coin's edge. Eat this, then sit. Breathe. And when the dream comes right, not what you think it means, just what it is, you comply.
Oh.
The cheese is sweet, grassy, it melts with the softness of memory. You close your eyes, the dream begins. You stand in an endless hallway lined with doors. Behind each one, a monk dreaming. Some mumble, some cry. One laughs, curled up with a wedge of cheese like a child with a doll. You walk, and with every step you hear your own voice echoing phrases you've never spoken. Things like, "He who rinds in silence shall not fear the mold, and wisdom curdles when overaged." You open a door. Inside, a monk sits writing. You lean closer. It's you. When you wake, your hand is moving across the page before your eyes have opened fully. You're writing a verse in perfect Latin. You can't remember the first word, but your hand does. Beside you, Hilarion peeks over your shoulder. "Oh ho," he mutters. "Poetic dreamer. We've been needing one." Egbert adds, "Don't forget to annotate meter. Rhyme cheese dreams are exceedingly rare." You sit up, blinking, as the world returns. There's a bowl of warm goat's milk beside you. Someone's placed a cloak over your shoulders. Small wooden sign now hangs around your neck. "Dreamer on duty." Hilarion crouches. His first dream's always like that. Overwhelming, rhyming, occasionally prophetic. Was I? Sleep long, no. But time in the rind is negotiable. He helps you to your feet. As you sip the milk, Egbert points toward a new page on the archive table. It bears your name and your dream. Below it, someone has sketched a diagram, a map of the hallway from your vision. Each door labeled with symbols. A bell, a bowl, a goose, a wedge. "You saw the doors?" Egbert asks, eyes wide. You nod. "That's new," he says. "Usually we just get livestock and ominous soup." The others begin to file in. The watch you recognize Fu Petros, Henry, even the abbot, who offers a polite nod as he takes his seat near the back and removes an enormous wheel of what appears to be pecorino from a velvet-lined case. This is no secret society. It's a confessional. Monks step forward one by one, recounting dreams born from sanctioned slivers, unauthorized wedges, an occasional ambient exposure from sleeping too close to the pantry. One tells of a vision in which he watched himself age backward into a wedge of Romano until he was graded into scripture. Another recalls floating above the abbey, riding a cloud shaped like a spoon, pursued by guilt made manifest as a rotting camembert. They're not ashamed, they're reverent. You realize these dreams are the monastery's true record? Not the chants, not the written scrolls. This is the real history. And cheese is simply the medium. Hilarion passes you a fresh slate. "Start your log," he says. "Tonight's yours." You write? "Cheese is memory, and memory once softened sings." By the next afternoon, word spreads quietly, naturally, like steam under a door. You've been accepted. Not just as a dreamer, not just as a watcher, but as a full initiate in the monastery's most peculiar devotion. The cult, though no one dares use the word aloud, of Saint Lactina. You first hear her name in passing, drifting on the breeze during sext prayers, muttered between two elderly monks as they adjusted the ropes for the bell tower. "Saint Lactina protects the rind," one said. "The rind and the gullet," the other whispered. You ask Petros, who only nods solemnly and hands you a scroll bound in waxed linen. "Read it in private," he murmurs. "And don't let the abbot see. Technically, it's deprecated." You find a quiet place in the herb garden, beneath the lavender trellis, and begin to read. The scroll is not long, barely 50 lines. But the tale it tells is unlike anything you've read before. Lactina, it says, was a lay sister in a remote 10th century Alpine abbey. She was not learned, nor particularly pious, but she possessed a curious gift. She could live solely on cheese, not merely survive, thrive. While others fasted and flagged in devotion, she remained robust, radiant, and oddly euphoric. Her only nourishment, a daily morsel of pungent alpine tome, aged in linen and prayer. Monks mocked her at first, calling her la petite rendeuse, but as years passed, she never aged, never sickened, never slept longer than a robin's blink. She spoke rarely, but when she did, she delivered visions cryptic, but oddly accurate. Harvests, deaths, even the outcome of theological disputes no one had yet started. Some say she died in her sleep, hands folded around a rind shaped like a rosary bead. Others say she turned into cheese, literally. The abbey's crypt still smells of her, the scroll ends. And the braver monks speak of dreams sweetened by her scent. You lower the scroll and exhale. She's real, says a voice behind you. You turn. Brother Hugo again. Always Hugo. She's our patron, our provocation, our problem. He sits beside you. There's a shrine, he continues, but we don't keep it in the chapel. Too many questions, too much paperwork. Where then? He smiles. Come. He leads you not into the crypt, not beneath the scriptorium, but into the very oldest part of the abbey, the abandoned latrine block. Hey. Nobody goes there anymore. Sanitation moved up in the world. It's empty, save for one wooden bench, long since rotted, and a small alcove carved into the wall where someone long ago, a simple shape, a circle, surrounded by dots, a wheel, a rind. In front of it rests a candle forever half-burnt, and beside it, wrapped in waxed cloth, a single wedge of cheese. She doesn't need much, Hugo says. A crumb, a whisper, a dream now and then. You kneel. You don't know why. It just feels necessary. Hugo places a hand on your shoulder. Many monks believed her dreams weren't hers, he says. They were ours. All of ours. She just knew how to listen. You glance at the wedge. Kind of cheese is it? No one knows, he says. It changes. You nod, because of course it does. As you return to the dormitory that evening, your pace slows. You begin to notice things others don't. A trail of fine crumbs leading into the abbot's study. A novice sleepwalking with a wedge tucked into his cowl, murmuring something about a basilica made of Gouda. A chant in Compline that includes an untranslatable line. Lactina nos fer curdium per noctem. Lactina, carry us through the curds of night. You write it down. That night, your sleep is deep but silent. No visions. No floating cows, just peace. In the morning, you find a small note under your pillow, written in neat block letters. You are now keeper of the shrine. Bring candles and butter, if available. You smile, tucking the note into your psalter. After breakfast, as monks scatter toward chores and scripture, you head once more into the abandoned latrine block. You light the candle, you unwrap the cheese, you kneel, you whisper, Saint Lactina, I'm listening. You don't speak of it. Not because it's forbidden, but because something about the shrine, the ritual, the candle glow on stone, that silent reverence for Saint Lactin invites secrecy of the sacred kind. Not the kind bound by rules or punishment, but the kind that grows soft and patient like mold finding a home on a good rind. Still, word gets around, softly, curiously. Novices begin asking you questions in whispers. What does the candle smell like when it burns? Do you ever leave a full wheel? You think the mold on her offering is meant to form letters? You don't answer, you just give them tasks. One brings beeswax for the shrine. Another leaves a sprig of marjoram. One especially nervous young monk who confesses to dreaming of a talking goat reciting legal doctrine carves a tiny wooden spoon and places it reverently beside the alcove. The shrine grows, not grand, not obvious, but intimate, honest, and with it, so do the dreams. It begins subtly, a shared rhythm among dreamers. A staircase of butter curls, none holding a wedge that drips like candle wax. A voice not loud, not human, murmuring the phrase revered is the curd that sings. You record it all. In Liberlactis Somniorum, your journal grows by the hour. Pages filled not just with dreams, but with translations, symbols, sketches. You don't write in lines anymore. You let the dreams shape the margins. One entry simply reads, I am a wheel. I roll forward. I remember. I soften. I turn. Then the incident happens. Not a scandal, not a crisis, but enough to send ripples through the abbey's quiet calm. A novice brother Nestor, round of face and chronically inquisitive, falls asleep during lauds. Not uncommon. But when gently nudged awake, he opens his mouth and begins to chant. In Greek, perfectly, a language he doesn't speak. The chant isn't from any known liturgy. No one recognizes the melody. Lilting, rhythmic, almost lullaby-like. When transcribed later, its loose translation reads, "When the rind is broken, the veil shall lift. When the milk is sung, the bones shall shift." Naturally, the abbot calls an inquiry. Naturally, you're summoned. You arrive in the chapter room to find a semicircle of robed monks, their eyes solemn and searching. The abbot gestures for you to speak. Brother Nestor's dream, you begin, is not unique. The phrasing, the symbols, they've appeared before. You open Liber Lactis and show the entries. One from you, one from Petros. One, allegedly, from a monk long since dead, copied from a scroll held in the crypt's restricted stacks. The chant, the symbols, the idea of a veil, a milk song, a turning. Coincidence? The abbot asks, brow arched. Accumulation, you reply. We are not dreaming independently. We are connected through the cheese, through the rites, through ... her. You don't say her name, you don't need to. The room is silent. And then Brother Egbert Grizzled, Jockstreak, stands and places his hand on the liber. I confirm the patterns, he says. They are consistent and they are expanding. The abbot looks exhausted. Do we ... endorse this? Egbert doesn't flinch. We record it as we always have. Finally, the abbot sighs and says, then we must contain it. You blink. Contain? He raises a hand. I do not deny the sanctity of dreams, or cheese, or even, he hesitates, the possibility of inspired dairy. But we must remain monks, not mystics, not bards, not ... rhymed poets. You nod slowly, and give us the space, a room, a page in the ledger. Let us keep the dream safe. Another pause. Then, quietly, the abbot says, take the old vestry. It's done. Within a day, the vestry becomes the archive of curded visions. A small sign is posted discreetly outside. Dreamlog Leclars, Greek for in wholeness. Side. The walls are lined with entries, some new, some ancient, some entirely in pictures wheels, clouds, a cow crying softly into a chalice. There is an order to it, a logic known only to the cheese. Each entry is sealed with wax made from the shrine's candle. Each is blessed by a prayer whispered beneath your breath. Lactina, mother of dreams, grant us peace within the wheel. No one teaches it to you. You simply know. You begin to notice the patterns. Not just in dreams, but in behavior. In the rhythm of the monastery itself. It starts with the feast days. You're seated in the refectory one morning, sipping tepid broth, when Brother Petros leans over and whispers, we're nearly upon the day of St. Gervais. You raise an eyebrow? The martyr? No, no, he grins. The semi-soft. You blink. St. Gervais, he repeats, patron of monks who nap during lauds and blame the Holy Spirit. His feast comes every year on the Tuesday after the full moon closest to the first sign of goat migration. You wait for him to crack a smile. He doesn't. Instead, he slips a folded parchment into your hand. It's a chart neatly ink listing saints and their associated cheeses, along with symptoms, visions, and suggested chant tempos. You scan the page, St. Lactina, soft bloomy rinds, scent-based dreams, silence before Compline, St. Gervais, creamy cow's milk, trance chanting, mild sleep floating, St. Cacharias, crumbly hard rinds, prophetic stuttering, excessive humming. Beneath it a note, feast cheese must not exceed 1 cubic inch per monk. You glance up. Is this sanctioned? Petros shrugs. The rule doesn't forbid celebration, just indigestion. A handful of brothers cleaning pews more vigorously than usual. A novice polishing a wooden spoon like it might be used in a coronation. Someone replaces the standard beeswax in the shrine candle with an experimental blend of sheep tallow and lavender. You're assigned to the archive responsible for compiling previous dream entries linked to feast nights. You begin sifting through scrolls, ink-blotted folios, even a few fragments scribbled on parchment made from recycled vestment linings. The records are ... vivid. One dreamer described floating above the abbey inside a balloon made of melted raclette. Another recounted a luminous wheel descending into the chapel and offering each monk a personal gospel made of cheese slices and mustard seeds. It's one entry written in calligraphy so fine it could have been done with a strand of hair. Simply says, "He came in, Brie." The monastery breathes differently. Evening air carries a low hum of expectancy. The moon, bright and unclouded, hovers like a god's unblinking eye. In the refectory, the long tables are arranged with care. No extravagance, just dignity. Cloth napkins, candles, a single central plate on each table. Modest wedges of Saint Gervais, chilled and sliced with ritual precision. Brother Henry begins the invocation, his voice slow and lilting. "O wheel eternal, rind of mercy, softness beyond measure." You all respond, "Fill us gently," then the eating begins. Each monk takes only one piece, savors it, rests in silence. The effect is immediate but not chaotic. No one shouts, no one levitates. Instead, you feel ... attuned. Your breath aligns with the rustle of ropes. Your pulse echoes the flicker of flames. Air tastes sweet, like something remembered from childhood, but never truly known. The dreams, when they come, are unlike any before. They arrive early, before sleep. Eyes open, mind still. You see the abbey not as it is, but as it wishes to be. Stones replaced by woven wheat, bells shaped like cow horns, cloister where monks glide, not walk, on buttered sandals. You see yourself, older, quieter, speaking a language made entirely of kitchen scents, and you hear it. The song, the one only the Kurd remembers. You wake some time before matins, so do the others. Silently, instinctively, you gather in the vestry. Dozens of you. Each monk kneels and begins to write. No one speaks. The archive expands. Pages multiply. So do drawings, prayers, experimental verse. Someone's added a musical staff and scribbled what might be the first note of the song. You linger at the shrine. A new offering rests beside the candle. Not cheese this time, but a single pressed flower tucked inside a rind. You inhale. It smells of spring, of pasture, of secrets held lightly. And beside it, in delicate handwriting, Saint Lactina walks again. You don't ask who wrote it. You just bow. The days after the feast slide by in slow curls, like melting wax or softened curds. Everything at the monastery seems quieter, not subdued exactly, but wrapped in a kind of contemplative hush, like the building itself is chewing on something divine. You wake one morning to find the cloister stones unusually warm beneath your feet. There's dew in the air, but it tastes faintly of butter. And when you walk past the orchard, the bees no longer buzz. They hum gently, in what feels suspiciously like a three-note chant. Brother Petros calls it post-feast bloom. You're still inside the rind, he explains. The real one, the cosmic one. You want to scoff, but you can't not after the dream you had last night. It was simple. No monks flying, no dancing goats, no floating wheels. Just a hand, yours. Placing a small wedge of cheese on a napkin, across from you an unseen guest. When you awoke, your hands smelled of rosemary and milk. You make your way to the scriptorium. On your desk, a folded page unsigned. Inside, a map, no labels, just lines, curving and crisscrossing, ending in a symbol. A cheese wheel, drawn in gold ink, with one thin crack running through the rind. A question scrawled in the margin. Do you know where the first wheel cracked? You bring the map to the archive, but even Egbert, who knows everything, including how to fix a leaking inkhorn with beeswax and salt, has never seen it. It's a riddle, he mutters, or an invitation. An hour later, the abbot calls you into his study, seated behind his desk, a mug of steaming broth beside him. Fingers drumming lightly on the tabletop. You've become very central, he says. You say nothing. He gestures toward the copy of Liber Lectis Somniorum resting on his desk. The edges are dog-eared. A sprig of sage marks a page halfway through. "I've read it," he says. "All of it." Your heart skips. "I don't know what it is," he continues. "Devotion? Madness? Revelation? It has the tone of prophecy. But the formatting of a recipe book. Some pages smell of vinegar." You nod. "That sounds about right." He exhales through his nose. "And yet, I dreamed last night." "Yeah, wait." He meets your gaze. "She was there. You don't need to ask who. She didn't speak. She only opened a door. But I remember the sound it made." His voice grows soft, like crust splitting under a knife, like home. You let the silence bloom. He nods slowly. "Proceed with the archive." With caution, you stand, offer a brief bow. "Bring me any new symbols," he adds, "especially if they hum." That afternoon, you find Brother Hilarion sketching something in the dirt outside the chapel. He's using a spoon. "It came to me in the middle of Sext," he says. "I looked down at the floor and saw a pattern in the dust. I just, kept tracing." You examine the sketch. It's a spiral, not uncommon. Within it, a shape. The map's wheel. The cracked rind. Hilarion doesn't notice your recognition. He's humming something tuneless. You copy the pattern onto parchment. You bring it to Egbert. He's already seen it. "It's appeared in 4 dream logs," he says. "One dated 12/23. One last month. One etched into the underside of a wooden soup ladle, though I can't prove that wasn't decorative." "What does it mean?" He shrugs. "Nothing. Everything. Maybe it's the place. The source. The moment cheese became sacred, or corrupted," historians still argue. That night, you walk the cloister long past Compline. The stars are bright, the moon low and ripe. You carry no cheese, no candle, only the map. You follow it instinctively, turning left-right, descending stairs no one uses, stepping over a loose stone, ducking through a doorway nearly grown shut with moss, and then you're there. A room you've never entered, beneath the oldest part of the abbey. Small, round, lit by nothing. But in the center, carved into the floor, is the cracked wheel, not drawn, chiseled, ancient. You kneel. You place the map beside it. It fits exactly. Your heart drums. Your mouth tastes of thyme and salt. Then a sound soft, unmistakable. The rind gently giving. A whisper inside your chest. Not a word. It's just a knowing. This is where it began, or where it broke. You placed your palm on the crack and dream while awake. The floor is cold beneath your hand, but it's the kind of cold that feels remembered rather than felt, like the chill of stone in a dream, or the absence left behind when you wake from something warm. You kneel in silence, palm resting gently in the groove of the chiseled rind, and let the stillness wrap itself around you like a woolen cowl. You don't fall asleep. And yet the dream comes. It begins in darkness, not the frightening kind, but the soft, weighted dark of a pantry at night, of linen draped over aging wheels. You hear breathing, slow, gentle, not your own. Then a whisper, not in words, not exactly, a rhythm, a soft pulsing. You recognize it. The hum of monks, chanting half asleep. The wind through the herb garden, the rattle of a cooling wheel just pulled from salt. You see her, Saint Lactina? Or at least, you believe it's her. She stands in a field of wheels, hundreds of them, shoulder high, each turning imperceptibly, as if warmed by a sun you can't see. She walks slowly, barefoot, trailing her fingers over the rinds. With each touch, a whisper escapes, soft as rising dough. You try to step forward, but your legs are made of parchment. So, you listen. She turns to you, face calm, ancient and young at once. She places a wheel at your feet. It cracks, gently like bread splitting in an oven. And out of it flows not cheese, not milk, but sound, a chant, 3 notes, a lullaby. Then a sentence, clear as honey and warm water. The first dream was kept in the curd. You wake with your cheek pressed to the stone. No idea how much time has passed. No idea how you got here, but you know, with a certainty that hums through your ribs, that something shifted. The crack in the wheel wasn't a break. It was a beginning. You stand. Knees aching, fingers tingling. You leave the chamber slowly, treading carefully through corridors that suddenly feel older than they did the day before. It's not worn. Sacred. Outside, the abbey is just stirring. Laud's bell still a few minutes off. You move instinctively toward the archive. The vestry door is ajar. Inside, Egbert and Petros are arguing gently over the phrasing of a dream log. That includes a cow wearing papal vestments and issuing decrees about dairy hierarchy. You interrupt. I found it. You say. They turn. Instantly still. I found the crack. Egbert steps forward. The mark. The place. You show them the map. The groove in your palm. The pages you've begun to write since. You don't try to explain the dream. You don't need to. They know. Has it spoken before? You ask. Egbert shakes his head. We've suspected it was real. We didn't know it still ... worked. Petros crosses himself slowly, reverently. It's time, he says. We spend the rest of the morning preparing. Not in a ceremonial way. In a monk's way. You sweep. You copy. You boil water. You light a candle and forget to watch it burn. But that night a meeting is called. The watch. The abbot. Novices. Everyone who's heard the whisper of a wheel in their sleep. Everyone who's seen symbols in the bubbles of soup. Everyone who's written a psalm in cheese crumbs across a wooden plate without realizing. The chapel is too small, so you meet in the cloister. Candles line the stone walk. Lanterns hang from the arches. At the center, a simple wooden table. Upon it, a single wheel of cheese. Wrapped in linen, untouched, you step forward. You speak not as leader, but as vessel. We have dreamed, you say, and the dreams have echoed. We have eaten, Petros adds, and the rind has remembered. The crack is not brokenness, Egbert says, voice trembling slightly. It is invitation. Then silence. Then, from the novice's corner, a voice you don't recognize sings the first 3 notes of the chant you heard beneath the abbey. It's perfect. No one taught it, but everyone knows it. You all join. The wheel is sliced. A sliver passed. A bite taken. No visions. Just warmth. Silence. You watch the faces of the monks. Not ecstatic. Not overwhelmed. Just open. You realize it was never about the dreams. It was about readiness. About permission. About the soft truth that waits when the world grows quiet enough to curdle into meaning. You close your eyes. You place your hand over your heart. You whisper to no one and to everyone. Let the rind be soft. The days that follow are gentle. You rise before the bells nowed out of duty, but because sleep feels less necessary. Not absent, just ... satisfied, like a bowl that's already been licked clean. Other monks say the same. No great visions, no floating abbeys, just small things. Brother Hugo says he dreamed of a spoon that sang lullabies to the broth before matins. Brother Nestor quietly reports that he saw a wheel of cheese slowly rotate into the shape of a sleeping lamb, and when he awoke, his stutter was ganat, least for an hour. No one's alarmed. If anything, the dreams have softened, lost their urgency, as if the wheel, having cracked, no longer needs to knock so loudly. The archive is no longer a secret. Monks wander in freely now, with their tea or their prayers. Some write, some read. 1 or 2 sit silently and nap with quills in their hands, trusting that the page will capture what the mind forgets. Even the abbot visits more often. He never writes. But you've caught him standing before the shelves, fingertips grazing the spines, breathing as though he could read with his nose. You return often to the cracked wheel beneath the abbey. You don't bring others there, not yet. It's not out of possessiveness, it's reverence. The place feels ... folded, like a page in time bent gently to mark a passage. Instead, you bring offerings. A sliver of aged, a small square of wax paper inked with a chant. Once, a folded napkin bearing nothing but crumbs left, behind by someone who came in silence and gave all they had. The shrine of St. Lactina has grown too, still modest, still hidden. But someone added a garland of woven rosemary. Someone else placed a stone carved with the outline of a rind, and beneath it, she curdled our fear into rest. You light the candle, you whisper her name. And sometimes, if the breeze is just right, you hear a faint sigh from the alcove, as though something exhaled, something old, something tired, and something ... satisfied. One evening, Brother Hilarion corners you in the orchard with a splinter of pear and a question. What happens when we forget again? You pause. You mean the dreams? No, he says, knowing the pear down to its core. I mean this. The stillness. The listening. The softness of it all. You think for a while, then we let it be. And when the rind hardens again, we wait. And we crack it. Gently, as many times as we have to. He smiles. Good answer. The novices perform a chant. They've written themselves 8 voices in harmony. No text, no score. Just a melody, they say, came to them while staring into a bowl of cottage cheese. It's beautiful. No one laughs. You add it to the archive the next morning. The final page of Liber Lactis Somniorum remains blank. Intentionally, every dream needs its silence. Every wheel its empty slice. In the nat white space, you place only a single phrase. Sleep well. The cheese watches. And so, the monastery settles. Not in stagnation, but in something gentler. Something more deliberate. The rhythms remain, the bells still toll, the prayers are still chanted, the broth still burns someone's tongue once a week without fail, but beneath it all, there's a softened current, a shared stillness, quiet understanding that wasn't there before. They call it the calm of the rind. It isn't written anywhere, but you hear it in how the monks close books now softly with care, how novices clean the refectory not in silence but humming tunes no one taught them, how even the wind in the cloister arches no longer whistles but sighs, like it's catching its breath after a long, long vigil. You return to the cracked wheel beneath the abbey just once more. This time you don't bring cheese, you don't kneel. No. You simply sit beside it, back against the cold stone wall, and rest, eyes open. You're not hoping for a vision. You've had enough of those. You're waiting for the breath between. You don't need the wheel to speak. You're here just to listen. And it does in its own way. The air vibrates not like song, but like memory. It doesn't give you answers. It doesn't give you dreams. It just gives you the sensation of being part of something very old, and very slow, and very kind. You rise eventually, stretch, and leave the chamber. Outside, the abbey is glowing in the gold of late afternoon. Brother Egbert waves from a garden bed, kneeling beside a row of onions planted suspiciously in the shape of a spiral. Petros passes you with a stack of laundry, nodding toward the wind and saying only, "It's brie weather again." Henry is napping in the chapel pews, a spoon balanced perfectly on his chest. You pause at the vestry. Inside, the archive has grown not in mess, not in size, but in tone. The entries now reflect not just visions, but peace, gratitude, even jokes. One monk drew a cartoon of St. Lactina, juggling wheels of cheese over a fire labeled heretics. Another simply wrote, "No dream last night, slept like an uneventful cheddar." You smile. There's a new candle at the shrine. It's wax infused with basil and honey. It burns brighter than it should. You add nothing. You've already written your verse. Instead, you head to the scriptorium. A novice looks up from his page, eyes wide. Master ... What should I write next? You answer without hesitation. Something slow, something round, something that melts. He nods. You sit at your desk, unwrap a slice of humble goat cheese from a cloth and take a bite. It's perfect. Just enough salt. Just enough time. And as you chew, you close your eyes not to sleep, not to dream, but to remember that the soul, like milk, curdles best in quiet, that the rind protects what matters, that somewhere in the folds of sleep and flavor, the divine still whispers. You smile, and everything stills. And now, it's time to let the world soften. You've wandered through dim corridors, sat beside dreaming monks, listened to whispers curled in cheesecloth and scripture. You've followed the flicker of candles and the hum of quiet truths. Not loud, not urgent. It's just there beneath the daily noise, beneath the ordinary hunger. Let all of that drift now. Let the abbey fade, its stones settling into the moss of memory. Let the dreams curl up like sleepy cats beneath your thoughts, purring in a language you no longer need to translate. Let your body sink just a little more. Let your breath slow. You don't need to chase the meaning. Not now. You don't need to trace the spiral. It traces you. Let Saint Lactina keep watch beneath the rind. Within the hush, wrapped gently in linen and legend. And if you wake before dawn, if your room feels just a little warmer than it should, or if your pillow smells faintly of rosemary and something you can't quite place, just smile. It's only the wheel, turning slowly. Just as it should. Sleep well. And may your dreams be soft, round, and blessed. End of script. Sweet dreams.